Spartan Life Radio on Blazing Hot 91.
Welcome to Spartan Life Radio. I'm your host, Cheryl Wilkerson. So glad you could be with me on this Sunday. I appreciate all your listenership all the time. And don't forget, if you have a great guest for Spartan Life Radio, well, you can hit me up on my Norfolk State email, or, you know, if you have the number, you can call me. Just let me know, because we're always looking for great Spartans, people that have attended Norfolk State, people that work at Norfolk State, faculty, staff, all of that. Sometimes we've even had friends of Norfolk State. But today, this man needs no introduction. All I need to say to him is, I want my guest to say something as though he's standing in Joe Eccles Hall right now.
That's easy, Cheryl. All you have to do is say, "Behold, the green and gold."
You have made my day. We welcome to the program today Jackie Bowe. Jackie, welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Cheryl, I'm honored to have this interview with you. You and I have a little history. We've known each other for quite some time, and it's been a good relationship over the years.
Yes, and you are, in fact, the voice of Norfolk State University. I'm quite proud of that. Look, I don't have anything to do with you being the voice of Norfolk State University, but I am quite proud of that. And like I said, I'm glad to have you here. So tell us, we always go back for the first portion of the show. We always go back as far as you are comfortable taking us back to where you were born, as my mom used to say, who are your people, and all that good stuff.
Well, Cheryl, I got a few years on you.
Not that many.
I'm 71 now, so I'm definitely a legitimate senior citizen.
Yay!
I came to Norfolk State in 1968, and as a political science major. And as I got into my educational process, I found myself getting more involved with radio, and also more involved with public address announcing.
But why do you think that happened? Why do you think you veered that way when you came to Norfolk State?
Well, you know, I thought I was going to be a young Perry Mason when I first went in political science. Mm-hmm. But as I got into, I would say, the competitive mode of political science, some of the people I were competing with, one of them ended up being a judge. So I knew I was in trouble.
Or they might have been in trouble had they tried to step behind a microphone the way you do, right?
Well, you see, I think out of my class, 2 judges came out of that class, so
wow.
That was phenomenal. And
how
just
impressive.
to be in that environment, and I tell people that all the time that I meet, you can go to Norfolk State and see the world.
That is true. Did you get that degree in political science, or did you switch majors?
Well, I was sort of in between the two at the time, and I'm probably closer to the media as opposed to the political science motive. Chester Benton was also in my class at the time, too. He started out as a political science major as well, so we had some old radio ties from our early days in education.
Wow. I did not ever know that about you. That's impressive. And were there any professors on campus that helped you veer towards the communication side? Where did that come from? Was it somebody at home saying, you know, you might want to look at communications? Were it some professors at Norfolk State? Were you watching some games on TV? Where did it come from?
Well, I got to tell you, I think it started from my high school days. I went to school that's discontinued, like many of our black high schools in Virginia, Union Kempsville High School in Virginia Beach. And at the time, I was a junior, and I started doing I was a scorekeeper for the basketball team for the longest time. And I played football, but that wasn't not in the cards for me to take it to the college level. But I ended up being a sports reporter at the time when Channel 13 had a weekend show with high school reporters reporting on their team's performances on Friday nights in basketball. So I started out that way, and I also ended up doing the public address announcements at my high school in the morning when you tell everybody, you know, what's for lunch, and so-and-so is having a special meeting at the end of school, that kind of thing. That was my early start. After that, when I came to Norfolk State, I had a job also setting up microphones and equipment for our basic tests that would be given in large numbers. And I would set up the microphones. I'd set up for performances by the band and the orchestras and the choir and so forth. And I would also set up microphones equipment for the basketball games in particular. And my neighbor, who happened to be Kenneth Gilbert, heard me do some mic tests on the microphone. And he said, "Man, you got a great voice." I said, "Well, thank you, Mr. Gilbert." He said, "Would you like to do some announcing at Norfolk State?" I said, "Wow, that would be an honor." So anyway, making a long story short, Mr. Gilbert more or less gave up his spot to give me a chance to be an announcer at Norfolk State in my junior year. And after that, it just continued to flow. I ended up...
But you had the experience from doing it in high school.
Yeah, some in high school.
I think that's very cool right there. I mean, not too many people can say that. And so when you had that experience in high school, I'm just wondering, how did you come to Norfolk State, and how did the political science love come in? Was that family ties, or did you used to watch politics on? How did you get interested in political science? Well,
so I was also a member of the high school debate team, and I loved to compete at that level for the longest time. And during that time, it was the VIA schools that would compete. We'd compete against IC Norcom and Booker T and so forth. We had one of our greatest debates against IC Norcom. And I think Chester might have been on that team at the time. And always had an interest in law. It's ironic that I never really pursued that to go to law school. But my uncle was also involved in politics a lot in the Norfolk area, who helped get a lot of officials elected. And he was also a bail bondsman in the city of Norfolk. So that's another part of a different side of politics.
What was his name?
Frank Bowe.
Frank Bowe. Wow. Seems like somewhere in the darkness of my brain, I've heard that name before. And so you said he was involved in getting people elected and bail bondsmen. Oh, yes. He was kind of quiet about his, direct political thoughts, unless you challenged him. But he would contribute, and he would support candidates that he really felt strongly in, and was an avid member of the Democratic Party. And so I also followed suit in the sense of that. In my early political science days, I also, at that time, they would rent cars for us. Political science students at Norfolk State could drive people to the polls and let them vote and take them back and all of that. So really?
We got involved in that at the early level. I had a brand new Chevrolet that year, driving all around town picking up people. So, no. My brain is not comprehending. So Norfolk State would rent the cars for the students to do that? No, Norfolk State didn't rent it, but it was rented through the Democratic Party to make sure
the Democratic Party would come to Norfolk State and say, look, what students do you have there that are involved in politics and would be able to pick up people and take them to the voting polls and safely deliver them back home? Yep, that's exactly right. And then Jackie Bowe, you are teaching me today, okay? Then a few years later, I got involved again with the Democratic Party. Jesse Jackson was running for president. And I got to be a state delegate for Jesse Jackson at that time. And so we went to Richmond for that Democratic convention, and we participated with Jesse. Of course, Jesse didn't win the nomination, but he was a close second at that time in the state of Virginia in the Democratic convention. I've often heard this story from a friend of mine, Gary Flowers, is on the radio in Richmond, and about how the Super Tuesday came up. Now, I can't give you the details, but he would say, Super Tuesday was created because of the power structure trying to keep Jesse Jackson down. And then later, that whole Super Tuesday thing was the reason why Barack Obama was elected. I was like, wow, the irony behind that, right? Well, it's always some untold stories in the political world. And yes. I think it goes the same even for this year's elections. And so I'm now learning about you that you are still... I'm guessing you are still on top of politics. You still know what's going on. You're still understanding what's going on in Texas and Florida. You keep track of this stuff. I think everybody should keep track of politics. They involve our everyday living. And a lot of times, too, the sad thing is your local officials are probably the most important persons that you could elect, because they affect your life on a daily basis. If you think a speed trap is set up in your city, you can go downtown and
confront that elected official to see if you can't get the law changed. But if you have to go on the state level, it's a lot more involved and a lot more people involved in the process. So I tell people all the time, the most important election is, number one, your local electors.
And I think you're so right about that. And Jackie Bowe, can you also speak to the importance of people signing up for different boards within the city? Like it might be the Water Commission board or whatever. And oftentimes they don't pay, but these boards and commissions are so important. Now, some of the higher boards you have to be chosen for. But there are so many of them within our government that you can choose to participate as a citizen, and your input is invaluable.
That's true. And I've been, well, matter of fact, I'm involved in a project now in my neighborhood that's in conjunction with the city of Virginia Beach. They're doing a historical research project on SeaTac area in Virginia Beach, and Ellen J. Garden's neighborhood, and also in Virginia Beach, as two historical black communities. And I'm involved in that committee with that at this point in time.
Ellen J. Gardens is such a beautiful neighborhood.
Yep. And it's ironic, too. I found out, just to give you a few tidbits on my neighborhood, found out that this property was originally a plantation that started over at Lake Wright, not Lake Wright, but Lake Taylor, and expanded over the Princess Anne County training border into now what is known as Virginia Beach. And also that our neighborhood was developed by a black funeral director, Mr. Walter Riddick, who also was the first person that we can find that we know of record that organized the first black planned community. Now, what that meant is he bought the land and he sold homes for the people in his community. And at that time, it was a 100% black neighborhood. And, of course, now that's changed some. Integration has taken a full effect on every neighborhood and for the most part. But
and what does the L and the J stand for? Do you know? It seems like I've read this somewhere before, but I can't recall.
They were supposedly some initials of Mr. Riddick's family member.
Okay.
Mr. Riddick was a very flamboyant kind of guy. When I was growing up, he had a nice straw hat cocked to the side, and he was the first black man I had ever seen with a cigarette in the cigarette holder. And he would do that. He also did horse racing.
What?
He had a farm right behind his house off of Northampton Boulevard. All that's been sold down. Now houses are replaced. Where he used to have, he would perform in buggy racing, where you'd hook it up to a little buggy, and on the weekends he'd go to Delaware and New Jersey and so forth and race. And in that stable at the time, he had all of the ribbons and trophies that he had won over the years. So he was I call him a Renaissance man, who sort of diddled in so much and was very successful at it.
And he is related to Paul Riddick?
Yes, Paul is his nephew.
Okay.
And, of course, Paul took over the funeral service after Mr. Riddick certainly passed away. And,
Paul himself heavily involved in politics. It's just amazing. It's just amazing.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, when you connect all the dots.
Happens. Sure, there's one thing, too, I'm going to tell you about my good city of Virginia Beach. I've gone down to city council on a number of occasions and confronted some people in certain issues at certain times. And as minorities, we need to do that, especially in Virginia Beach. It's one thing to talk the game, but you need to walk the game, too. And when people in city council see one or two minorities, somehow or another your voice doesn't seem like it gets heard. But if you walk in there with 15 or 20 people sitting in there that's rallying behind your cause, the choir starts to listen. One of the biggest problems I have in the city of Virginia Beach right now is their planning commission. They all run by realtors, except for one person that was a female who runs a funeral home. I won't call the name of the funeral home, but anyway, but she runs a funeral home in Virginia Beach, and the rest are realtors. And I said, no, if they're planning in the city of Virginia Beach, they're probably going to plan it more for their own economic reasons, as opposed to the little guy who does not want a condominium in his backyard.
Correct.
So I think that's a one-sided pitch, but it also comes with people that will apply to get on these kinds of commissions and so forth.
And, not too long ago, within the last couple of weeks, there was a city council meeting in Virginia Beach, and the citizens showed up who are opposed to short-term rentals with Airbnb and things like that. And you're right, they showed up, and I think that the city council is going to vote on it later this month, but they showed up en masse. You're exactly right. They don't want these short-term rentals, but 1 or 2 showing up probably would not have the effect of getting a news story about it, being on the telecast about it. You know, it's just a difference.
There is the difference. And, it's ironic, too, if the Planning Commission passes whatever they think that is valuable, 9 times out of 10, the city council will side with them.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen that happen on a number of occasions. And it's amazing when you go before the Planning Commission, sometimes you're allowed in the room to listen to the process, but you still can't participate in the process. But yet you can hear everything that's taking place and what the general consensus is.
And don't you think, Jackie Bowe, that what has happened with this country nationally in the last few years has awakened many people and gotten them to speak out? Now, there's going to be opposition. Like the other day I was reading that secretaries of state, the Republican Party is now stacking secretaries of state in different states because they oversee elections. We saw what happened in Georgia and everything. When they oversee the elections, they can oversee elections. But don't you think that the general public has opened its eyes and realized that they just can't sit back and hope everybody will do the right thing on their behalf?
Cheryl, you really say something very interesting. First of all, I would say that Mr. Floyd, to me, lit the candle all over again with his death. It made America look up and take a decent look at what's happening. And, I heard Steve Harvey say a few weeks ago that black people try to escape from police just like white people do all the time. Mm-hmm. But the white people don't get shot. Mm-hmm. They get to go to jail and live. Mm-hmm. Where blacks tend to get shot and shot at on a more regular basis. There's something wrong with that picture. When you looked at Tulsa, Oklahoma, I didn't know anything about that until within the last year or so. And it also speaks to all of our lost history that never got reported. We never heard about it. And we had our ancestors were afraid to talk about certain issues. And it is interesting about the untold story of America. Now, sure, I get in conflict sometimes with people that says, well, we need more black history. Well, that sounds nice. But to me, there's no such thing as black history. It is America's history. Mm-hmm. And it should be included as America's history. Certainly we know it's black. Of course, it should not just have that picture of black. It's America's history. Whatever took place in America is America's history.
And we know that, I learned about Tulsa maybe 20 years ago, only because of the fact that I was doing a radio talk show. And, I was really applying myself to learn, because I don't want to get on the radio and sound like an idiot, not knowing, history, present day, all of that. But when we talk about Tulsa, we have to talk about in Richmond, Virginia, Jackson Ward area. That was 20 years before Tulsa. We had our own barbershops and insurance companies and all of that, and multiply that by all the different black communities that were spread out across these United States. And when we think about the Rosewoods in Florida and how all of these communities were demolished, and now we look back and say, why don't we have generational wealth? Because it was stolen from us. So after we were brought here, bought this nation, built this nation, which people today talk about the richest nation on the world, but they forget the part about because it was built off of free labor. After we did that, then we went to our communities when we got out of bondage and we built generational wealth, but it was burned. We were raped, all of that. And that's why it's not seen today. And that's just not in one community. That's not just Tulsa. That's all over.
That's true. Cheryl, you may remember also in North Carolina, they made an effort to create Soul City, which had a few buildings put up and a few homes, but it ended up having a demise. There just not enough interest, and at the time, I don't think no minorities had enough funds to develop that project at the time. So yes, we've had some failures along the ways of even development, but a lot of times for our projects, we have a hard time financing or getting finance
Yes.
to even do certain projects.
Yes,
And
but back in the day,
then you pretty much cut off a lot of projects. And if your bank,
back in the day,
somebody else's bank doesn't believe your dream, then it's not going to be their dream, so you won't get your funds.
Right. And so now today we have to ask for funds, when back in the day we had established those things, but you came over and you burned them. You took them down. You massacred us. So it's diabolical. But Jackie,
there's one company that comes to mind that was black owned for a lot of years. I don't know if they're still in existence now. Was North Carolina Mutual.
Yes.
North Carolina Mutual financed a whole lot of black businesses and homes throughout the Eastern Seaboard. And they were one of the few lenders at the time that would really loan money for mortgages and so forth to minority people. And I don't know if they're still in existence now, but if they did close, I mean, we lost a valuable partner in the sense of financing of minority properties.
We are speaking to Jackie Bowe, yes, the voice of Norfolk State University. You didn't know about his political side. That's what we brought out. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, more with Jackie Bowe.
It's Spartan Life Radio on Blazing Hot 91.
Welcome back, Spartan Life Radio. I'm your host, Cheryl Wilkerson. On the line with me today is Jackie Bowe. I'm just tickled pink to have him on the show with me today because I hold him in such high regards. He was telling us earlier about how he came to Norfolk State University, and he had an interest in political science, and we've just been exploring that. But now we're going to get more to the fact that you came to Norfolk State. You graduated from Norfolk State. What happened, Jackie, after you graduated from Norfolk State? The day after graduation, what happened in your life?
Sure, life can take so many turns and twists. And when I came out of Norfolk State, I got a job at North Shipco. I was one of the first minorities in North Shipco to be a sales rep for that company. Mm-hmm. And I stayed with them for about 20-some years. And then I retired from them, and then I moved again to another career. I also had a radio career running in between that time with my first radio program was with WRAP, and I used to be the night guy. You get to talk to all the ladies late at night and hear all of the interesting conversations of living. And then after WRAP, I worked at WHIH for a while. Some of these people won't remember these stations because they went around in their lifetime. I also worked at 103 Jams for quite some time. So during that transition, I also worked with another company, Checkered Flag.
Okay.
That was an interesting situation about commercial business, Cheryl.
Why do you say that?
Flag, they had a rule. Say you went to the parts department and you needed a tire. The tire might actually be $50, but Checkered Flag would double the price when you went to the counter.
When I went to the counter, or when everyone went to the counter?
Everyone. It was automatic. Wow. If the part was $20 cost, or whatever the case may be, it was automatically $40.
So did people get up in arms about that, or people just accepted it?
At the time, Checkered Flag, too, was an importer of foreign cars, Audi, Volkswagens, that kind of thing. So there were only 5 major dealerships in America that stocked any of those parts. So they had a buyer's, seller's market in that sense of retailing. But I tell you, too, Cheryl, I also worked in the diamond industry for a while.
Ooh.
That was totally interesting. It is, diamond industry sometimes is like a game. And they have people that train you to learn how to take your money. And it's done several different ways. Just to give you a quick rundown, suppose I were to come in and I wanted to buy a diamond ring. I want to get engaged. And I only have I'll say I only have $250. And so he says, what do you have for $250? Well, I have a $250 ring, but I'm going to show you the $500 ring. And I will clean that ring up. So when you look at it underneath the scope, you say, yeah, that's nice. And you get excited, and you say, I can get that for $250. No, sir, that's $500. That's the better class for and the ring that you're looking at right now. So then you show him the $250 ring, which you don't clean. So when you put it underneath the scope, it looks real dirty and cloudy. And you says, oh, no, I like that $500 ring. So, I said, well, this is a symbol for your love to your future bride. $250 is okay if she's half blind, but I'm sure you want the very best for her. Well, I don't have that kind of money. So we open up a charge account for them. They get approved right there on the spot. And once we got that, we got you as a customer. We'll call you up every time there's an anniversary. We'll call you when you got a birthday. We'll tell you it's Christmas time, what we got on special. And now you're hooked into our credit as well as a consistent customer. So it's interesting sometimes on the games that are played.
Jackie Bowe, I think you should write a book on the extreme capitalism. And, you're talking about those diamonds. That makes me think of the diamond mining in Africa. And I've always been an advocate, say, for the last 10 years or so. I'm like, why don't people just go buy CZs? Because nobody can tell. And now, I think it was a few months ago, there was an article that I skimmed, and it was talking about lab-grown gemstones. So
yep.
I imagine that now the jewelry world is pushing these. But to me, you might know, Jackie, but if I walk in and I've got on a tennis bracelet and it's a CZ, who is going to know?
Well, it's a couple of things. First of all, let me tell you about CZs. There are grades of those. You can get a real bad CZ, and you can get one that's just as clear as any diamond. But very few diamonds are perfect. They all have what they call inclusions in them. And inclusion really means it has some defect in it somewhere in the stone. A defect could be it's a little dark spot. A defect can be it looks like it has a crack in the middle of the stone.
Okay.
But also you may not see that crack in the stone from a distance. If I were to put it underneath a scope or one of those little glasses that you can peep through with your eyes, then you can see perhaps where that imperfection could be in the stone. Any diamond that has a number of imperfections should be a lower value in the worth of that stone. So it's interesting about that. The more perfect the stone, the more pricier it's going to be. So you need to keep that
I'm
in
sticking to my
guns.
Look, you want to get engaged to me, go buy me a CZ. I'm saying it on radio, okay? It does
well,
not
that's not
make
a bad
sense
value
to me.
either because some CZs just for the look, you can't tell.
You can't tell. You need that scope, right?
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Wow. So who
and if
knew?
anybody wants to look at your diamond underneath the scope, apparently they're not your friend. That's too much information.
And the money difference is just astronomical. I mean,
no doubt about it.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
Well, you
Except
are
labor
just
because it's all lab created, so you don't have to go in a coal mine. You don't have to ship it. You don't have to go to De Beers.
You're not exploiting young black workers.
Well, it's amazing too about companies like De Beers. They will invite major diamond companies, say Helzberg or Zales, to their. Maybe they go to London, and they will be presented 5 bags of diamonds. They will evaluate those 5 bags. That's all De Beers is offering you out of those 5 bags. Out of those 5 bags, you better buy at least one.
Wow.
If you don't, they'll push you so far back on the list. It'll be a long time before you get the quality of stones that you may be looking for. So you're almost forced to buy one out of those 5 presentations that are shown to you. So it's an interesting business. And sometimes it's also about a little conning, too, about good guy, bad guy. It works like that in the diamond business as well.
Jackie Bowe, you have taught us political knowledge today. You've taught us about the car business today. You have taught us about the jewelry business today. My goodness. Okay, so Now you should teach us more about the broadcasting business. So when you were doing all of these different radio stations, did it become a love of yours, or was it just something to do? How did you feel about radio at that point?
Well, I tell you, I was just, I guess on SportsWise, I started more as a public address announcer first. And I think it was Chester Benton that asked me to see whether or not if we could do some Norfolk State games on radio. So I sort of got thrown into the bash kind of rough, not knowing too much about doing a sports broadcast. And it also had a lot to do, too, with the people that you work with that helps make a broadcast successful. And what I mean about that is, say, your other assistant who may be your color person that we describe as color. Mm-hmm. That's a very important job. First of all, a color guy also means that he's giving the announcer a break.
Yes,
and by that break, he's also saying, well, John Robinson came out of a family of 15 people. You know, he may go down that road. Or Johnson goes up, makes a tackle. He was at the defensive back spot. He came up and dropped him 3 yards in the backfield. So that gives me a chance to have a break, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So that is successful. As I got into broadcast more, I learned other tricks. Like, for instance, smile when you talk.
That's it. I tell people that all the time. That's what you have to do. Yeah.
You can hear a smile.
Correct.
And believe it or not, I mean, it is true. If you tape yourself and you smile when you're giving information, you can hear it. Mm-hmm. That was one of the most important things I think I heard in broadcasting. Another thing, too, was say you're at a basketball game and nobody's in the place. I mean, literally, maybe 50 people. So you don't have any crowd noise.
COVID basketball.
So what do? You take a microphone and you might stick it on the floor. Mm-hmm. You can hear the shoes screeching. You can hear the ball bouncing. Mm-hmm. So the person at home thinks that, hey, I'm really missing an exciting game. Because they still get some idea of some sound effects. And the same thing, you go in a football booth and you stick a microphone out the window and hope nobody's cussing.
FCC would not like that, right?
Well, you can get away with a lot more of that now than what you used to. So, but that's something that can work for you. And if your engineer is standing by and somebody is trying to light up that microphone in that direction, he naturally just cuts that mic off at the time being. Either relocate the microphone or forget about him completely. So it's
Jackie Bowe, have you mentored people? Have people come to you and said, I want to be in broadcasting, help me, I want to be a play-by-play announcer, I want to do color. Have people come to you?
Well, Cheryl, I've had people to touch base with me, say they want to do certain things, but in the long run, they don't show up. They don't call.
Tell the truth.
And I tell them quick, I said, look, we can go to the gym. We can, let me know what you want to do. I think I really should, somebody else should be getting ready to step up because I'm 71.
That doesn't have anything to do with it.
One day I'm not going to be in that booth for a living situation, poor health, but just life itself. So we need to have the next generation of announcers being developed. And I would tell any young announcer who's thinking about it, number one, you need to know your English skills.
Yes.
You need to know how to read.
Yes.
And being an announcer doesn't mean just sports. You got to read announcements, coming up, events, and you got to be able to sell those events. Mm-hmm. You got to think that Friday night dance was the biggest thing happening in Tidewater, and you got to be there, and people got to believe it. So it's a hard sell, soft sell, that kind of thing. And you got to be able to tell a story.
Okay.
I think if you tell a story, you captivate people more. And, you know, there's always a human interest side. You know that one of the players' father's fighting cancer or whatever the case may be. You might not want to just emphasize that, but your side of the story there is that this player is so dedicated to the program, and his father told him, go and play the game. Don't worry about me. That's the human side of the story. So I think that's key. I think it's also about being lucky, Cheryl. Being in the right place at the right time, where somebody else can hear you that hopefully will help you to move along to the next level. I felt like I got that help at Norfolk State with Kenneth Gilbert in particular.
Wonderful.
And once I got with Kenneth Gilbert was tight with Bob Bowman in the CIAA.
Yes.
And that opened up the door for me to come and work the CIAA tournament in my early years, and that got me started. And when I got there and Norfolk State went to the MEAC, I was invited to do MEAC. I still do CIAA basketball games, and I still do MEAC tournament games. And I
that
guess
voice
my
is
biggest crown
booming,
of glory
Jackie
was
Bowe.
the Final Four tournaments that I did for 4 years,
Right.
starting in 1999.
Well, let me ask you this. What about your interaction with the public, like before games, during games, after games? Has there been a change in that? Because, today we're seeing people throw things at players and fight players and players going in stands and all. Has that changed for a sports announcer such as yourself?
Well, I think I got pretty safe coverage. I'm at the at a basketball game. We have a little, I call it temporary fence that keeps people back a certain distance, and we usually have security officers at Norfolk State are standing right there by the doorway entrances and exits. So I've never had a problem with confrontation with anyone. Football stadium, I'm up high. By the time they get up there to possible maybe get to me, I'm already on the elevator going down. So I never have to go into those kind of scenarios.
So
I would tell you one
that.
interesting scenario, Cheryl.
Okay.
Being a public address announcer, sometimes you will mispronounce somebody's name.
Yes, and they will have
I
a
don't care
conniption.
who you are. I don't care if you making $350,000 as a TV announcer. You will mispronounce somebody's names.
Yes.
Names for me this year, not just this year, but seem to be getting more and more difficult. During my young days, it was Smith and Jones, Harris, common names for a lot of minority people, and let alone first names, Jim and Jack and Michael. And now we getting all kinds of names. We're getting players from different countries. So you have to try to learn those names and enunciation. So I tell anybody for a game, you need to, if you can, get in contact with sports information directors, especially at the college level, to help you with pronunciations of names. Now Howard has an excellent system that I like. Howard's SID this past year has a tape that they can send to you on text it to you, and it will give you all of the pronunciations of all of their players.
Okay.
So you get a chance to study it for a week if you ask for it in advance, so you don't have to get a particular name incorrect. Hopefully.
Can you speak? Can you speak to the fact that you have to prepare for these games? So I tell people, when you're watching somebody on the red carpet, an announcer on the red carpet, and they're making everything look so easy and talking to all the celebrities and everything, they have for a year, better part of a year, carried around a book that is larger than any book you can imagine. And they have studied this book in anticipation of this one night because they have to know so many details. Like you said, pronunciation of names, who's connected to who not to mention to who, whose mother-in-law just did something fabulous or whatever. It's just so many facts you have to know. Can you speak to the fact that as a play-by-play announcer, public address announcer, you also do the same thing? You have to be on your A game.
Well, that's true. I tell anybody, when you are doing a ball game, you should have been working on that ball game at least a week. And I'm talking about just a local guy. And the guy that works at CBS and ESPN and so forth, they have other resources. Their resources is that they'll have somebody that will be at a training camp at, say, Duke University all week long. Or the announcers may be there all week long. Or the announcers meet with one of the players at dinner the night before the game so he can get more feedback directly from that particular player. The announcers on television, again, have other resources in that they've got that little earbud where somebody tells them exactly where the ball is spotted on the field, tells you who made the tackle, and he can also give you any additional information. If you made a mistake in your coverage, he'll whisper it in your ear so that you can correct yourself. So it has a lot to do with sort of where you are in the sports world and what you're doing. But, yes, preparation is very important. I can't wait to walk in the stadium and somebody give me a roster. I like to have mine a week in advance. Now, sometimes that doesn't happen. You might get it if you're lucky at the latest 2 days before the game. Certain programs are better prepared with staffs as opposed to others. Norfolk State has a great staff in the sense of that, so I can always count on Mike, and they usually give me more than what I need in a timely fashion, and they know what I want, and so I get it in a timely fashion, so it's been a lot easier for me at Norfolk State.
That's what we do. I am talking today to Jackie Bowe. He is the voice of Norfolk State University, and I will claim him forever. We're going to have more of our conversations with him, but first we're going to take a little bit of a break, and then we will be back.
It's Spartan Life Radio on Blazing Hot 91.
Welcome back. It's Spartan Life Radio. I'm your host, Cheryl Wilkerson. On the line with me on this Sunday is Jackie Bowe. Yes, that Jackie Bowe. So right now, I have to tell you that I am so proud of this young man. He's like one of my heroes, and I tell him this all the time. I don't think he believes me, but he is. Because back in 1999, oh my goodness, our very own Jackie Bowe became the first Black person to serve as the chief public address announcer for the extravaganza that we know as the NCAA Division I Final Four Basketball Championship. That year, it ran March the 27th through the 29th. It was in St. Petersburg, Florida. Jackie Bowe, how in the world did you end up behind that table?
Cheryl, I got to tell you, that's an interesting story in many ways. Number one, earlier, prior to that date, of course, I was notified from the NCAA that they wanted a tape of my voice. So at the time, no, I take that back. The commissioner from the MEAC asked me for a tape of my voice. So I sent him a tape of my voice, and I thought we were getting ready to do a commercial locally for the MEAC tournament or something of that type. About a week later, I got a call from the NCAA, and the young lady identified herself, and she told me that I was one of the finalists for selection of the tournament announcer for the NCAA tournament. I said, what tournament?
Did you believe her?
I didn't believe her. I really didn't. I thought it was a joke. And I was at home, and the lady said, no, sir, you are one of the finalists in the final 15 out of 75 people. I said, what? I can't believe it. She said, you didn't know anything about this, did you? I said, no, I didn't. She said, your commissioner sent in a tape for you, and we're wondering, can you do another tape for us? So believe it or not, I went to Norfolk State, and I saw one of my good buddies. Everybody knows him as Chico. Chico and I went into a room, and Chico got the best tape recorder that Norfolk State had, and we made what we call a promo tape, and we sent it to the NCAA.
But you did this back then. Was it on DAT? Was it a cassette tape? How did you deliver this tape?
I think it was on cassette at that time.
Okay, I'm with you.
And,
okay, go ahead.
It worked well at the time. I sent it to them, airmail.
Yes.
And they got it, and I also had to have 3 recommendations from people in the area that knew me. And Dick Price was one of my persons for recommendation. And also the commissioner from the NCAA and the MEAC were also wrote me referral letters. And there was 4 people also. Herbert Collins, who was the vice mayor of Norfolk at that time.
Yes.
So anyway, I sent that off along with the tape. And about 4 days later, the lady contacted me. She says, yes, sir, we got everything we need. And we'll let you know exactly what's going on in the next few days. So I waited. And then a few days later, I called her. I said, can you tell me anything? She said, Mr. Bowe, I'm not supposed to tell you anything right at this point. But she says, if you can keep it to yourself, you have won the job.
Wow.
Cheryl, I hung up the phone. My wife was in the kitchen fixing dinner. And I just walked outside of the house and threw my hands up in the air and said, thank you, Jesus. Could not believe this opportunity that I got into the final 15, and now I was being selected as the one. That was the most humbling experience I've ever had in my life. And then, two, getting an opportunity to announce in front of 60,000 people in an arena, and also you're going to be shown on national television all around the world. I met reporters from Canada, from the military, that were also covering on naval ships that were at sea. They had a team, I think, in Germany that was also covering it. And it is amazing about what you don't see on television. When you go into a media room that's as big as Eccles Hall, and you got reporters from little one-horse towns, I call them, where there's only maybe 75 people in the city.
Yes.
And the little local reporter is there to cover John, who's on the bench at Duke, who probably might not play, but he's still their hometown hero. And they have people there covering those kinds of stories. And there's so many interesting stories and so many people that you meet. And when you walk out in the parking lot, you see all of these satellite dishes. You know, you go to a football game now, and in school you might see 3 or 4 dishes. Not uncommon. But you go to the NCAA Final Four, you might see 50 dishes.
Correct.
That are out there transmitting all around the world. So it's.
But you give me goosebumps when you are even telling that story. And did you know at the time that you were the first black person to serve as the chief public address announcer? Did you know that?
I was notified by some of my other friends when the story was starting to come out.
Okay.
About that I was the first. And,
okay.
At the time, I wasn't worried about first. I just wanted to make sure I did a decent job.
And tell me this. Now, this is kind of just fluff. But so I probably can imagine how you prepared for it, but I want you to get into that. But first, I want to know, how did you pick out what you were going to wear and all of that? How did that go down?
Well, you know, that's you want to go looking like a professional. And at the time I went, that was an event in which people did dress at these press tables and so forth. So I tried to be representative for me. I tried to be representative for my family.
Yes.
I tried to be a representative for not only Norfolk State, but for Black America, to represent them in a positive way. And sure, I guess after, you know, I will tell you one thing about pronunciation, too, in this story. You get the chance to meet the Mike Krzyzewskis and so forth, and all of the head coaches from your various schools that are in the tournament. But their public relations guy came over, and he tested me on the names of all his players. And he asked me about, what about the coach? You mean head coach Mike Krzyzewski? Yeah, okay. I believed him, because he was expecting for a black guy to not be able to pronounce this Polish name. So I surprised him when I said it correctly.
And so how
after
had
that, you know, you get tested in lots of ways.
But you withstood the test. How did you prepare for this? So how far in advance did you learn that you got it before March the 27th, 28th, and 29th? Oh,
well, I knew before the first ball was thrown up, certainly, probably 3 weeks before the tournament actually started.
So you had 3 weeks to prepare.
I had to sit down and watch a lot of basketball.
Yes.
And I had to learn to see what everybody else was calling certain teams, especially when they got down to Sweet 16 and the Final 8 and then the Final 4. And then you try to get as many publications as you could to see who the starters were on these teams. So I had a pretty good idea who the starters were going to be before I even walked into the arena. And, of course, too, when you get into the city in which the tournament is being held, most of their publications had the starting 5 in the newspaper anyway.
And so after you finish the game, say the first night, and you go back to your hotel room, what do you do in your hotel room?
Get ready for the next day.
How do you do that?
Well, of course, you've had some elimination of some other people.
Right.
Sometimes, to me, I like writing down my own lineups and so forth so that I can understand where everybody is on that sheet, and I don't have to be looking all the way down alphabetical or numerical to find out where a certain player may be so that I can get it. I also learned that there were certain rules that the NCAA wanted me to enforce, and that was number one. We are the NCAA. We are not NCAA.
Double A. That's right.
I was corrected on that quickly.
But a lot of people were. That's fine.
Quickly. And the reasoning I think is behind it is because NCAA sounds almost like NAACP.
Yes.
And they wanted to make sure that there was a clear distinction as to what organization it was. I also found out, too, that most of the people on the committee, when I got in the first time, believe it or not, there were 3 minority people on the committee that helped vote me in.
Wow.
The commissioner that was in charge of the committee at the time was married to a black woman, and he was white, and he went to a black church. So with that makeup of the committee at the time helped me to get in the first time around.
And of course, again, that was in 1999. We are speaking to Jackie Bowe. He is the voice of Norfolk State University, and he is recounting to us when he found out that he was going to become the first African American to serve as the chief public address announcer for the NCAA Division I Final Four basketball championship.
Cheryl, I got to tell you one short story, if I could.
Yes.
I was in Indianapolis, and Bob Randall, everybody knows Bob Randall around Norfolk State as Frog, was my roommate that year. It was Monday night, championship night, and it was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was starting to get ready. I think the game started at 6 or either 7, and I was getting ready, and I started looking for my pass, and I couldn't find my credentials to go to the Final Four game on championship night.
Oh, my.
Oh, man, I got dressed. I think the lady, when she threw out the newspapers, my pass might have been right in with the newspapers at the time and got thrown away. So I went downstairs and said, I'll catch the free shuttle and go early. Mm-hmm. And I got there, and the free shuttle wasn't running yet. I said, oh, my goodness. So then I hired a cab. As soon as I got in the cab, I knocked the lens out of my eyeglass.
Oh, my goodness.
So I said, oh, boy. So anyway, the cab driver was the best thing I did. The cab driver got me to the stadium. I saw all the guards, police out front of the main gate area, and the cab driver drove me right to the main door. Mm-hmm. I said, I thought we were going to have a fit just to get through the gate. And as soon as I got there was a black man at the gate that I had seen and met the night before. And I knocked on the door. He said, I know who you are. I said, I have misplaced my pass. I've lost it. I think the lady at the hotel threw it out with the newspapers. He said, come on in. I'll get you some credentials. So I looked out again. So we went to CBS for our rehearsal at 5:30. CBS at that time would tell you, said, well, we got 5 minutes to get this stand to the middle of the floor, everybody be in place in the next 3 minutes so we can do the presentation of the awards at the end of the game. So the rehearsal went through, not a problem. I put my glass back in, and it held for me. We started doing the game. Cheryl, lo and behold, as we were doing the starting lineups, believe it or not, the earbud in my ear that CBS was giving me command, stop, go. And they were doing that at the time, the voice along with the introduction of the player with the video. And the thing disintegrated. I mean, I lost it. It broke apart. People saw me scrambling to try to get that earbud, which was destroyed. So now I had to go on my own pace. And after I got through with that, I was sweating bullets. And the guy said, man, you hit it perfectly. And I said, wow. So then I get on the plane and come back to Norfolk. And as soon as I get to Norfolk Regional Airport, get off the plane, my eyeglass lens fell out again.
Oh, my goodness.
After all of this. So that was, I guess, one of my untold stories.
But being prepared and being a professional, not just that one time, but just being a professional, your whole entire broadcast career prepared you for that moment. And that's why you could handle it and you could carry on, because I tell these young people all the time that I'm trying to train, you know what? a brick could come through the window. You have to keep on being the broadcast professional. Then you might talk about the brick coming through the window, but you just can't lose your mind. People are listening, and especially, they're going to want to know what happened. So that's why I believe you were able to pull it off, because you are always the consummate professional.
Well, thank you, Cheryl, for that compliment. But I also remember you in your young radio days when I think you were at WNOR, I believe, in early years.
Yeah, I did that.
I remember funny. We used to chat about what should I do here and do that, and you didn't need me at all. You just blew it right off the top, and they fell in love with Cheryl easily. And then when I think about your radio experience through Hampton University as well as Norfolk State and many other ventures. Now, there's one other area, too, that a lot of people don't know about. I was with a radio broadcast group called This Week in Black College Sports. It was based out of Atlanta. And at that time, we had about 12 markets that we were going into at that time. So that was kind of interesting, where we do local reports, and we call in our reports on Saturday night and early Sunday morning over the phone, and they would be taped, and then they would be given either to some of the local college stations or either some of the commercial stations that also picked up the broadcast. So we did that for a year. So we've had when I think about sporting events, it's been a major part of my life for the most part.
And I do want to let everybody know that for 4 years, you held that position with the Final Four. And I am just ever so proud of you. I'm proud of what you are doing now. And I think that anybody in the area that wants to do anything, public address, sports, or whatever, I think they need to come through Jackie Bowe. That's my suggestion, okay?
You're very kind. Now, I'll tell you another thing, too. WNSB was also a part of me. We did broadcast for a year with them, and I think we kind of changed the direction of it at the time, and now it's changed into a mighty good position. You got a great announcer on it that goes everywhere, and I think he does a pretty good job for Norfolk State, and I'm hoping he can cover the baseball game that our baseball team is going to be playing this Friday at East Carolina. That would be huge.
We have a new athletic director, hands out to Melody Webb. And just so many great things have happened when I think about, we've gotten a new football coach. I think about the basketball team and beating Appalachian State, and the baseball team winning, and the bowling team. I think it was the girls bowling team, I think did a great job. Oh, tennis. I'm thinking tennis. Men and women's tennis teams did excellent. We are on a roll at Norfolk State University. You better watch out.
Cheryl, let me tell you, Michelle came in at a rough time in a way to take over things with so much happening to her so quickly. And for us to get a football coach in a timely fashion, I think she did an outstanding job there. The coach from Southern has been around the programs for quite some years. He's a North Carolina Central graduate.
Yes.
And he's done a phenomenal job for Southern. I mean, when he came here, he was 5-1 at Southern.
Yep.
And somebody said, well, why is he coming to Norfolk State? I said, well, maybe the paycheck was a little stronger. I don't know that to be a fact.
And he also told me, I did interview him, and he told me that it's closer to home because it's Shelby, North Carolina. He's from Shelby, so it's closer, yeah.
Yep, well, I'm sure that was a factor as well. So anyway, I'm going to wish him the very best. Cheryl, one other thing, too, we've had 3 HBCU athletic directors to retire this year.
In 1 week.
And one at Bethune-Cookman in particular, who also is a minister down there, Lynn Thompson, phenomenal guy at Bethune-Cookman. And apparently he's a Florida A&M graduate. He made a comment that he'll get a chance to sit on Florida A&M side of the field now and cheer for his alma mater. I'm sure that went over like a lead balloon at Bethune-Cookman, but nevertheless.
Well, Jackie Bowe, we have come to the end of our time. I am so thankful that you joined me today. It has been a wonderful Spartan Life Radio, and that is because of YOU. Thank you.
Cheryl, what can I say for you? You are your own special person in so many ways, and you always beat the drum for concerns of students, and you've done that for a long time. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you all for listening. I know you could have spent your Sunday afternoon a different way, but I am thankful for you. Keep it right here locked to WNSB and behold the green and gold.